What's up, everybody? My name is Paddock, and today I'm going to show you a pro tip for learning chord progressions. Before we start the tutorial, if you enjoy my YouTube content, please make sure you subscribe to my channel, give me a thumbs up, and click the bell for notifications. Have you ever wondered how professional musicians can easily transpose songs into different keys? If you have, this lesson is going to explain it all to you. So when you look at a chord progression like these first 8 measures of the blues progression in the key of G on the alto sax, which would be B flat concert, when we look at these chords, we see the first chord, it is a G7 chord. So we look at the G7 chord, we think G, B, D, F natural, so we're lowering the F sharp to an F natural, and we play those 4 notes. That is your G7 chord. Then the next chord is a C7 chord, so we think C, E, G, B flat, that's your 1, 3, 5, and flat 7 in the key of C. So that'd be C, E, G, and B flat. Then we're back to the G7 for 2 measures. Then the C7 for 2 measures. And the G7 for another 2 measures. So you're reading chord symbols, you're working your way through the song, you can play it no problem, but if you had to play it in a different key, it would take a lot of work and you'd have to really think about what you're doing. The way that a professional musician would look at that exact same chord progression is through a numbering system where you think about how the chords are related to each other. So I'm not looking at an individual G7 chord, then an individual C7 chord, back to a G7 chord. I think about how they are related to each other. So the G7 chord is the 1 chord. So now I have to think about how the C7 chord is related to the G7 chord. So that'd be G, A, B, C. So that is my 4 chord. So if I think about this chord progression in numbers that are related to scale degrees, it's way easier to switch it into any key I want to play it in than if I'm thinking about them by their letter name. So if I'm in the key of D and I want to go to the 4 chord, I know that it'd be a G7 chord. If I'm in the key of B flat, that'd be an E flat. If I'm in the key of B, that'd be an E. If I'm in the key of F sharp, that would be a B. So no matter what key I need to play this song in, I can do it relatively easy because I'm thinking about intervals and scale degrees as opposed to an actual chord name, like a G7 or a C7 or a B minor 7 or an E7 flat 5. So when you start thinking about your chord progression as numbers and how they relate to each other, it's super easy to remember the chords and it's really easy to transpose it into different keys. Now, the reason it's really easy to remember them is because there are only so many patterns, and when you're seeing them as letters, you don't easily see the pattern. But when you see them as numbers, these patterns repeat over and over and over and over and over. So as you keep learning new songs, you're going to continue to see these patterns pop up over and over. Now, of course, they're going to be in different orders and all that kind of stuff, but you're going to have patterns that pop up all the time, and your ear is going to get used to it because you're seeing it as numbers as opposed to letters. Once you start looking at chords that way, it'll be a whole lot easier to transpose them into different keys. If you're watching this tutorial on chord progressions, I'm guessing you're trying to dive deeper into the world of improvisation. If that's the case, I'd like to invite you to check out the Scott Paddock Sax School. Inside the Sax School, I have courses dedicated to improvisation. Beginner improvisation, where we start off with 1-note solos and work our way up into more complex solos, all the way up into playing over difficult chord changes. So if you'd like to get a lot better at improvisation or any other aspect of playing the saxophone, check out the Scott Paddock Sax School. I'll put a link in the video description below. Going in between a 1 chord and a 4 chord is pretty easy, so let's look at the last 4 measures of this blues progression where we have a little bit more movement. So if we were playing this progression in the key of D, the 5-7 chord would be D, E, F sharp, G, A, so that'd be A7. The 4-7 would be D, E, F sharp, G, so that'd be a G7. The 1-7 would of course be D7. The 2 minor 7 would be D, E, so that'd be an E minor 7 chord, which would be E, G, B, and D. And then of course your 5-7 would be the A7 chord again. Now, you can see that when we're talking about this way of looking at chords, you have to know your chords pretty well. So I wouldn't consider this a beginner or even an intermediate way of learning chord progressions. It's definitely, I start to teach it more in the early advanced level of playing, but even as a beginner or intermediate improviser who is learning chord progressions, if you can look at them this way and analyze them and see how they're acting, it's going to make it a whole lot easier to figure out what's going on in the song. Even if you're still reading the letter name of the chord as opposed to the number name, if you can understand how these chords are related, it's going to make it so much easier to play and understand what's going on in the song. Once you get to a certain level where you can knock your chords out really easily, you can figure out scale degrees and intervals really easy, switching to this numbering system is going to make your life a whole lot easier when it comes to learning the progression, understanding how it works, and transposing it in different keys. And it's going to be great for your ear because you're going to start to hear and see how these patterns are working together. Now let's take a look at the A section of a jazz standard. Do you recognize the changes to that jazz standard? If so, leave it in the comments below. By the way, comments are great for helping YouTube videos rank. So if you enjoy my content, please leave me a comment below and it'll make this video a whole lot more popular. All right, so let's take a look at this chord progression and analyze it by the numbers. So we start off with a 1 major 7 chord, and this song is originally in the key of C. So we go up and down the 1 major 7 chord. Then we have a 7 half diminished chord and a 3 dominant 7 with a flat 9 chord. So take a listen to that. And it resolves to the 6 minor 7 chord, which in this case is an A minor 7 chord. Now if you look at the 7 half diminished, 3 dominant 7th, 6 minor 7 chord, you can hear that it's a minor 2-5-1. Now, if you're looking at the letter names, you would think about that as a 2-5-1 in the key of A minor, which it is, but if you think about it as a minor 2-5-1 on the 6th chord, it's going to make your life a whole lot easier because you're going to start to see this pattern of 7-3-6 all the time when you are talking about minor 2-5-1s. And the same thing happens for the next set of chords. We have a 5 minor 7, 1 7 to a 4 major 7. That sounds like this. So you're going to start to hear these groupings and see these groupings of 2-5-1s, even though we're not labeling them as a 2-5-1 with the numbers. Again, with this one, we're labeling it a 5 minor 7, 1 7, 4 major 7. So by doing that, you're going to start to see this pattern of how these chords are working together, all within the tonal center that you are in. So if I was going to transpose this chord progression, I would look at it and see that I have a 1 major 7 chord for the first 2 measures. Then I have a minor 2-5-1 that resolves to the 6, and a major 2-5-1 that resolves to the 4. So that starts to make your life a whole lot easier because you're not thinking about all of these other related chords. You're thinking about the chords and groupings and how they're all revolving around the 1 chord. So if you're at the point where you want to start being able to transpose chord progressions into different keys really easily, the first step is thinking about your chord progressions in numbers. Now, the good news is if you have iReal Pro, this is an option. If you go to your settings and then choose font, you can choose numbers. And if you choose numbers, all of the chord progressions will pop up as numbers as opposed to letters. When you start working on chord progressions like that, it will be really easy to transpose into different keys. You'll start to see the patterns of how everything is working together, and it'll be a whole lot easier to remember the chord changes. Thanks for taking the time to check out this video. If you'd like to dive deeper into my saxophone world, I'd like to invite you to check out the Scott Paddock Sax School.